want to welcome you to our 37th Grand Recognition Ceremony. We're so excited to have Dean Christoph Guttentag here with us. He's the Dean of Undergraduate Admissions for Duke University. He has been in his role for he's been here at Duke University for 25 years. However, he hails from San Francisco, California. He received his undergraduate education at University of California, Santa Barbara, where he graduated with high honors in philosophy and music theory and history. He received a master's degree in musicology at the University of Pennsylvania, and he then worked there for 9 years in admissions in numerous roles. Since his time here at Duke University, he has seen, under his leadership, the number of applications has increased at extreme levels, record levels, and admissions has dropped to 9.5%. The presence of international students has increased to over 12% of the class. The percentage of students from diverse backgrounds has risen to 50%. And Guttentag has been an active participant in regional and national organizations of admissions professionals, including the College Board and National Association for College Admissions Counseling. He has been a featured speaker at numerous secondary schools with the subject of college admissions. He is also a TIP parent and huge champion of TIP. Please welcome Dean Guttentag.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much, Shauna, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. I hope you don't mind. It's really, okay, so how many kids have either fidget boxes or spinners? Okay, yeah, okay, all right, good job. So for me, I don't have one of those, so I walk around. All right, so that walking and talking simultaneously is my fidget box. So thank you for indulging me on that. I've been doing this program for a while. I really enjoy it. I enjoyed it when I was a TIP parent. About five years ago, my daughter now is, as long as there are no glitches between now and Friday, we'll be graduating from high school. You can find that amusing when your child is 17 and 18. You will know exactly what I mean. And then she's off to college. And for us, in our family, I love talking about the college admissions process, and for me it was interesting to have a child who was a tipster, to go through the process and to really see it then from a parent's perspective and to see how it unfolds. And frankly, I was kind of patting myself on the back because I actually followed my own advice. So it works, more or less. So I've got a bunch of things I want to share with you. We have an hour together, and there will be time at the end. I will finish with enough time left to answer your questions. Maybe not all of your questions, but a lot of your questions. So we will have time for that. And the other thing is, oh well, I didn't clean my glasses enough. So it's like you're all like filled with stars. So anyway, all right, so I've got a bunch of things to share with you. You have a handout. I'm not going to go over everything in the handout. All right, I'm going to focus on a couple of things that I really want to emphasize. Now, before I do that, I want to say congratulations. I know how great it feels to get this recognition. It feels great. It feels particularly great as a parent. It feels great as a student. The students, the students really ought to enjoy it. But for parents, right? For us at least, it's an indication that we either did a really good job or we were smart enough to get out of our children's way. One or the other. And it's great. And when you think about it, all right, what this represents, the sort of standardized test scores that get you to here now are, they're really, right? They're typically among the top 10% of high school seniors, right? So that's worthy of being, it's worthy of recognition, it's worthy of being proud of. And then it has certain consequences, mostly positive, that I want to make sure I want to talk about, because for more than some, right, it really first of all, it confirms some of the things that we thought about our children anyway, but it also really makes real something that I think most of us assumed, if not all of us assumed, which is, by the time they're, 17, 18, their path to college is clear, right? There's no question that they're going to college, and now, it's a little bit of validation of that idea, not just that they're going to go to college, some college, but they'll go to a place where they can get a really exceptional education, where that an opportunity is presenting itself. This is evidence of an opportunity that's presenting itself of a path to educational attainment, educational excellence that not everybody has the opportunity for, but you do. And so I don't think it's too early now to be thinking about college. It's too early to worry about college, right? Don't worry about college. Don't worry, right? Which is one of those pieces of advice that nobody ever listens to, right? Don't worry, but it's worth thinking about it, and it's worth thinking about, all right, what are we going to do now? What do we do in the next 3, 4, 5 years to make this opportunity as much of a reality as we can? All right, so I'm going to give you a little bit of information. I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. I'm going to start, first of all, a little bit about what got you here, which is good testing, right? As we have a term in the admissions business when we talk about, the admissions profession, it's not a business, the admissions profession, the calling, when we talk about students who have good standardized test scores, we sometimes use the phrase, they test well, right? They test well, which is not exactly the same as being really smart, but most of the time it is. But we all know people that are really smart who don't test well. And that doesn't mean that they're not smart. It just means that the standardized tests that some people do well in, because they're wired well, because they've had some opportunities, because they're just plain smart, not everybody tests well. But you test well. And for most people, most of the time, it's a really good, relatively good, at least, indication that you're smart. And that's good, right? I mean, it's a good attribute to have, to be smart. Now, I have both sort of good news and bad news. Right? When you think about college, when we think about college, when we as parents think about college, right, being smart counts, right? When colleges are looking to admit students, they'd rather admit someone who is smart than someone who is not smart. Right, so that first step, you're in good shape, right? And they'd rather admit someone who tests well than someone who doesn't test well. It doesn't mean that they don't, but that doesn't mean that they only admit people who test well, but you are in a position to take a really good first step with respect to the college admissions process. So that's the good news, right? The bad news is it's not the only thing that counts. There's work to be done. And I'm going to tell you a little bit from an academic perspective alone, just from an academic perspective alone. Testing, standardized test scores are part of it. But greater attention will be paid to the courses that a student takes and the grades that they receive in those courses. Right? It's the courses and the grades and the testing together that from a purely quantifiable perspective, and quantifiable is a tip word, so kids tell your parents what that means. But just when we're simply trying to figure out, while we're in the admissions process, just sort of how does this student compare with the other applicants in a way that we can easily measure, testing and courses and grades together in roughly equal measure give us a sense of what a student is like academically. Right? So now this has several consequences. And part of it is that obviously, we want your children to get good grades. Also true, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be perfect. And I'll go into this in a little more detail why that's the case down the road in a little bit. But we want them to do well. We want the students to demonstrate that given the fact that they test well, given the fact that they're smart, given the fact that they're going to challenge themselves academically, we want them to do well. But doing well does not require being number one in the class. It does not require getting straight A pluses all the time. It just doesn't. And I'm going to tell you what's more important than that. I don't want to minimize the importance of grades. I don't want to minimize the importance of what courses are chosen. But I think sometimes we as parents have expectations for our children that because they're smart, because they're wired well, because they test well, because they, talk back to us in intellectual ways. We have these expectations for them that I think aren't necessarily right on point. Now, I've had enough familiarity with TIP students, with TIP families, to know that there's a very wide range of schools and communities and classes that tipsters have access to, or that they are educated in. Some of you live in school districts that are very well resourced, that have a lot of programs for gifted and talented students, that identify students early, put them into a good track, and where there's a path that you go down that a lot of other good students have gone down before, and it's a fairly straightforward path, and that's great. I've also spoken with plenty of TIP families that are in school districts, that are in communities where they kind of go, we don't know what to do with your kid, right? Where it's like, and I've spoken with parents that are sometimes at a loss with respect to how to help their child, who, and there are always tipsters. I mean, I don't know you, but I've spoken with enough TIP students who are really in a position where talking about the things that interest them, getting involved in the activities that they care about, doing well in school, isn't the way to be popular, isn't the way to be well supported. And that gets really tricky, and I understand that, and I appreciate it. So my advice to parents, particularly if you're in that kind of situation, I'm going to share the advice that my wife and I got now about 8 years ago. Parents, you have to be your child's advocate. You have to be your child's advocate. For some of you that will come easily, for some of you that'll be a challenge. Some of you won't need to be because the school or the community or the district will be their advocate. But for some of us, we've had to really push and ask and make sure that our child isn't bored, that our child gets the enrichment that they deserve, that our child is supported in a way that helps them live up to their potential. Right? So my first piece of advice to parents is again, particularly those of you that are in situations where your child is really the exception. Don't be afraid to be your child's advocate, and don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to ask for resources and ask for support and ask for opportunities that your child deserves. And students, a little side note on this, I guess students and parents, when we are reading admissions applications, and we read the application of a student who's in a rural area, small town, under-resourced school, and where they sort of bump up against what the school has to offer academically early on, right? They're sort of running out of courses to take in certain areas. We're going to ask ourselves, all right, you face that challenge, you face that limitation, what kind of opportunities have you found for yourself? They don't all have to be, they don't have to be expensive, right? But one of the things we think of when we're looking at applicants that are in some limited circumstances is, all right, rather than just accept the status quo, have you sort of figured out a way to push beyond that in some context? That is completely acceptable. It's completely okay, and it's something to think about. That may not be the case for you. That may not be the case for you. In which case, you're in a good situation. But if you find yourself in that situation where you're kind of running out of things to take, parents, ask, what can we do? What's the next opportunity? Is there something online? Is there a local college? Whatever it is there some independent study? Is there a teacher who's willing to work with them? And you don't know when that'll happen, right? But look for those opportunities and then take advantage of them. My daughter was admitted to a college that asked her to write about someone that was particularly supportive towards her, particularly helpful towards her during her education, right? During her high school education or during her pre-college education. And she picked an 8th grade math teacher, right? Who saw in her and a couple of classmates something that he felt needed to be responded to and gave them opportunities that were right for them. So keep your eyes open for that. Also, just like with grades, right? It's good to get good grades. That's profound. And we want you to push yourself. And it's good to challenge yourself in courses, right? But don't feel like you've got to pile on. Don't feel like if your child is unhappy, then that's beyond sort of typical teenage unhappy. But if your child is unhappy with having so much schoolwork that it doesn't give them the opportunity to do other things that they enjoy that are worth doing, then that's a sign, right? So it's worth being challenged. It's worth trying hard. All of these things are important, right? Don't shy away from a challenge, but don't overwhelm yourself. Don't overwhelm your child. And I'll talk about why that's also strategically important in a minute. All right. Now, let's talk about college. Let's talk about the admissions process to college. There are a lot of colleges out there. There are a lot of good colleges out there where the academic record is what matters the most. Where based on the academic record, they will be a strong candidate. They will be offered admission. Right? And there are tools out there, there are online tools out there to help you sort of figure out what schools those are, where your child falls into the mix, that sort of thing. Right? So the first thing is, there are a very significant, very large number of very good colleges where the academic record is really the primary determinant of whether a student will be admitted or not. And then the interesting task for you will be, how good is the match between the institution and my child? How good is the match between the institution and me? What kind of scholarships may I get? That sort of thing, right? So that's a whole segment of the college admissions process where really the academic record is determinant of somebody's admission, right? And there are a lot of schools like that. There are a relatively small number of schools, the ones that everybody has been whispering in your ear, where the academic record is just the beginning. And I want to talk about the role that the academic record plays in admission to schools like Duke, other selective colleges. There are probably 200 colleges where that mix of the academic record and the non-academic record is really what determines whether someone is admitted or not. Here's why. Beyond a certain point, and it's different for different colleges, but beyond a certain point, a student's academic record, small changes in an academic record, do not meaningfully distinguish among students in terms of their likelihood of success at a college. I think it's really important. And this is one of the reasons why you don't have to be perfect. I mean, if you are, great. Congratulations again. I'm not sure I'd want you as my roommate if you're that perfect. But for what is really the difference between a 770, a 780, a 790, and 800? Is there really a meaningful difference in that one question that a student got right or wrong or missed, right? What is really the difference, really, between the student who's number 1 in the class, number 2 in the class, number 5 in the class, number 10 in the class? Now, if you're at a high school that has 20 seniors, number 10 in the class, different story. But if you're in a high school where there are 200 seniors, 500 seniors, there's a school we receive applicants from in Texas has over 1,000 seniors, right? Who cares? What difference does it make? Right? Obviously it makes a difference in terms of the GPA or in terms of the rank, but in terms of a reflection of a student's ability, in terms of the reflection of a student's intelligence, in terms of the reflection of a student's ability to be successful in college, those are meaningless distinctions. And personally, I think it's not worth the time, it's not worth the effort to chase after the rank, to chase after the perfect, when there are other things to do, right? So it's important, and it's also true statistically. Small differences in whatever academic evaluation you use are not meaningfully significant in terms of what it means for the future, and they are not significant in terms of who we pick, right? So that's a practical reason. Now, if we're not paying attention to minimal differences, what are we paying attention to? Well, here's the first thing. Colleges and professors love students who know how to think. They love students who know how to question. They love students who wonder. They love students that respectfully, at least, disagree with them. Although they are tolerant of people who are 18 and 19 who don't know how to respectfully disagree, for the most part. But what's exciting about a college education for a lot of people, and certainly at places like this, is not the knowledge that's gained, right? It's not the absorbing of new information. It's learning how to develop your thinking skills, your analytical skills, your critical skills. It's learning how to look at a problem from multiple perspectives, not just one perspective, to realize that there are different kinds of solutions to problems, right? It's the ability, so what we're interested in, what we in the admissions process are interested in on behalf of the faculty are people that are going to think about the material, ask questions about the material, chew on what they're learning, sort of realize that, what I learned here in this class, what I learned in global health, relates to this anthropology class, and in fact, it relates to this mechanical engineering class that I took, a semester ago, right? Those sort of connections matter in the real world. Those sort of connections matter when you use your college education. And they matter when you're in college and you're in with a bunch of other smart people and you're sort of figuring out how to solve problems. And you're either working alone or you're working collaboratively. I can't emphasize enough that it's knowing how to think, developing those skills, knowing how to learn, knowing how to question, knowing how to be critical, knowing how to make connections, seeing contradictions or apparent contradictions, right? That's the stuff that excites us. And you can ask any counselor, any teacher, any principal at any school in the country, and ask them, is the smartest, most intellectual, most thoughtful, most creative person consistently the person who's ranked number one in the class? How often does it happen who's the person that's not ranked number one in the class is the one that the teachers love to teach? And more often than not, they'll say, yeah, it's not always the person who's ranked number one, right? So those are the skills to develop. Those are the skills to develop. That's the enrichment. You know, when you think about the kind of programs that TIP offers, that's the enrichment that it offers. I mean, I've seen it with my own child, and that's what makes somebody. First of all, it makes them an appealing candidate, and then second, it makes them an appealing student. Now, let me talk for a moment. It took me a while to realize all this. So, being gifted, which you are, right? Being gifted is a tool. I think of it as a tool. It's an opportunity you have to develop thinking skills. Right? Being gifted is not, parents, if we were really honest, we would take almost no credit other than genetic credit for the giftedness of our children, right? But and who knows? Sometimes they're so out there we sort of wonder how that happened. But it's a tool to be used. It's an accomplishment. This is an accomplishment. But more than that, it's an indicator that, okay, we have this tool, now how are we going to use it? All right. So when we look at applicants, essentially the question we ask ourselves is not, how smart are they? It's what have they done with this tool that they've been gifted with? Right? How have they used it? Here's just a little piece of advice. One of the advantages of being smart is that you can take chances and you can be wrong and you can recover. Right? One of the things that I've noticed, I've been in admissions for 34 years, and one of the things that I've noticed recently, recently last 10 years, recently, since as long as you kids have been alive, is I worry a little bit that people are becoming a little risk averse. Students are becoming a little risk averse. Not in the stupid ways that teenagers take risks, but I wish they were more risk averse. But sort of intellectually, academically, right? So if there's something that your child is interested in that they want to try out, that they might not be successful in, I'd say try it out. That one of the advantages of having good wiring, being smart, being gifted, whatever you want to call it, is you can make those mistakes. You can go, okay, that didn't work, and you can still go on and be successful in other areas. So don't be afraid to take a little bit of an intellectual risk. Don't be afraid to take a class that you're not sure how well you'll do, but that interests you. I think that's great. Now, if you use your gift or your child's gift to think well, to think critically, to question, right, to make connections, people will notice that about you or about your child, right? They'll notice that. And when they're writing letters of recommendation, they'll include that. And when we read applications and are making distinctions among smart students, we'll notice it. Right? If you develop the habits of thoughtfulness, of critical thinking, of analytical thinking, of being a little creative with your thinking, when you write an essay, when you're in a class, when you're in an interview, those things will come out, and we will notice, and we will pay attention to that, and we will value it. So I mean, it's good advice anyway. It's good to be a good thinker anyway. But there's also, because we are talking about college admissions, there is a practical element to it as well. So that's the first important thing I wanted to mention. Oh, look at that. This is astonishing. I'm kind of on schedule. All right, here's the other thing. Here's the other thing that we'll notice. And here's the other thing that will play itself out in the admissions process. And I've noticed this. I've noticed this among smart students, and I've noticed it among the parents of smart students sometimes. They're looking to be told what to do to get to where we are. Right? They want to know, what sort of activities should my child be involved in? What should they be doing over the summer? What are the courses that they should take? What kind of extracurricular activities are important? And my answer to that generally isn't very satisfying to people. Because what I think is important is that we as parents help our children sort of understand, decide, realize what they really care about, what they really enjoy doing, what they really find themselves being able to focus on, to think about, to talk about. Okay, so my own child, sometimes, at the dinner table, after we make her put down her phone, starts talking with us, or on car rides, starts talking with us about something that she's learned in some area that's kind of not very understandable to me. And I'm not a dumb guy, but she's off thinking about something. Either it's math, or it's physics, or it's biology, or it's history, or it's something, and she starts talking about it and is really excited about it, right? And at that point, well, because she's interested, I'm interested. But I understand it's my responsibility as a parent to encourage that, to listen carefully to what she's interested in. And then when opportunities arise, whether it's in an activity, whether it's a summer program, who knows what it is, right? To help her go in the direction that she's interested in, right? It's hard for me to emphasize enough the value of that, both in terms of the development of our children, and in terms of what colleges end up looking for. Because because let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that somebody has said community service is very important in college admissions. Right? People will tell you that. It is important. Some people are more into it than other people, right? And imagine a student whose parents have said, okay, you've got to do community service, and the 30 hours or the 60 hours that your school requires isn't enough. You've got to stand out. You are going to do 250 hours of community service, right? Yeah, you laugh. You wait. Right. Now think about, no, okay, fine. Think about an interview. Think about an essay. Think about a letter of recommendation. Think about an interview where the interviewer says, "Okay, I saw you did 250 hours of community service," and because the student's doesn't care about it that much, right? Because they've been forced into it. With what enthusiasm, with what depth, with what engagement are they going to be talking about that? Not so much. If, on the other hand, right? Now, imagine a student who loves community service, right? So imagine a student who loves that, right? But parents, for some reason, say, no, you got to do sports, right? You're going to do 3 sports, Again, imagine the difference that student could have, the difference that would make in a letter of recommendation, in an interview, in an essay, if a student's given the opportunity to really spend time on something that they really care about, right? So our job as parents, we have lots of jobs as parents, but one of them is thinking about what our child loves to do that matters, and then supporting them in that level of engagement. That will pay dividends. Now, one little caveat. Kids, it has to matter. Okay, so Xbox, no. You know, whatever. It's like, ooh, you know, what's that stupid? Sorry, I shouldn't say stupid. What's that? No, what's that game on the phone where you've got the little crystals and you know they disappear? I don't know what they, you know. Anyway, what's that? Yes, that's a Candy Crush. Thank you. Okay, all right. Mastery of Candy Crush will not get you into a good college. Okay, can we just get that? Can we just, you know, I am not saying do whatever the heck you want. All right, I'm not saying that. All right, parents, don't worry. You know, it's like I'm not that crazy. But you know, so our job, you know, it's like put away the phone. But you know, our children tend to get, you know, because they're in this kind of environment, tend to get excited by interesting things. And frankly, they tend to get excited by things that other students aren't so interested in. So our job is to support them in that. And if I can give you one piece of advice, it's like worry less about doing the things that you think colleges want. And think more about what does my child love to do? You know, is it worth doing? Right? If it's worth doing and they love to do it, support them. One final thought in this area. People will talk about, and I've tried to avoid the word passion. People will talk about passion, they will talk about focus, they will talk about angular, you know, sort of the angular student who does one thing well. And you will feel torn because some people talk about well-rounded students and some people talk about angular students and what do we want? What do we want? Some students are angular. Some students focus on one thing. They love this one thing, and oh my gosh, you know, to drag them away from that because it's bedtime or dinner time or whatever, you know, or you know, Billy, you know you get car sick when you read while we're driving on vacation, right? I understand. Some people are like that, and some people have a wide range of interests. Either is okay. In the coming 4 or 5 years, you will hear people like me say, oh no, you know, we're looking for people with passion, or we're looking for people with focus. You know, don't believe them. They are wrong. I am right. The overwhelming majority of students admitted to great schools are well-rounded. Some are angular, some are well-rounded. We like both. We like both. So follow, you know, think about your child. Does she like to do a lot of things, or does she like to do 1 or 2 things? Support them in that. All right. All right. My final thing. Oh, good. Go ahead. This is, you don't have to worry about this now, but it's something to file away in the back of your mind. Well, 2 things. One is, if your child applies to a college and doesn't get admitted, you are going to care about it a lot more than they are. All right. I can speak from personal experience. Now, sometimes your child may be devastated, in which case you have to like be the mature parent. But most of the time, you know, most of the time our kids are more resilient than we kind of give them credit for, and we're the ones that are easily offended or easily hurt. If your child isn't denied to at least one college, you're aiming too low. right? If your child isn't denied to at least one college, you're aiming too low. If they're denied to every college that they apply to, you've aimed too high. So so you don't have to worry about that mix right now. But the press makes, and we are at fault in this as well, the press makes college admissions seem like it's a sort of great sorting meritocracy. And that the best kids, whatever that means, get into the best colleges, whatever that means. And that's, sort of that's the way it is, and that's the way it should be. No. What people don't tell you often enough when you start to think about colleges is that and please don't take this the wrong way. My job is not to make you happy when I'm making admissions decisions. Right? My job is not to simply reward the students with the best academic records or the longest list of accomplishments or the best awards. Right? That's not my job. I do some of that, but that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to the university. And my responsibility is to the university, to the trustees, to the president, to create a class. My job is to create a class or to oversee the process where a class of about 1,700 first-year students are all going to come together here in August. In creating a class, I've got all kinds of priorities. So since I'm at Duke, I should use a sports analogy. Creating a class is like drafting a team. It's like creating a team, whether it's a basketball team, whether it's a football team, whether it's lacrosse, whether it's soccer, right? I don't know anything about soccer, so that's going to be bad. I was going to make some analogy, but no. But different positions have different attributes. What you want in a point guard and what you want in a center, or what you want in a center and what you want in a quarterback, right, are different qualities. But they're all important. Each one is important in the team together being successful. You can think of it as a symphony orchestra or a concert band. Right? We have different skills. We have different attributes. We have different interests. We have different backgrounds. We have different perspectives, right? My responsibility is to create a residential 4-year undergraduate community that is going to study 100 different things, that are going to be going out into the workforce in 1,000 different occupations, that are going to learn from each other for 4 years and hopefully beyond, that are going to be close friends, that are going to agree, that are going to disagree, that are going to learn something special in college, right? So my job is not simply to pick all the ones that have the best academic records or the longest list of accomplishments, right? My job is to put together this really interesting, talented, diverse, thoughtful, mildly contentious, sort of stimulating class of people that have some things in common and are different in some ways, right? And so when we are putting together a class, we're looking for different attributes. We're looking for different kinds of people. We're looking for different interests, right? The people who show a capacity to follow their interests, to sink their teeth into things, that'll be not only good grade getters, but good students, right? And the students where that becomes clear in the application that we understand who they are, those are the students who have the best chance of success, right? And the student who does the things that matter to her, that has developed good thinking skills, that gets excited by cool things, right? That student has the better chance of being admitted. And so I think on a fundamental level, my child is happier when she's doing the things that matter to her. But it also makes her a better applicant to college. So, it's not often that you get that kind of situation where the practical thing is also the smart thing. But that's what it is. So this is this is not the beginning of the journey, because the journey began when your child started correcting your arguments why she couldn't do something, right? No, Dad, that would be a much better argument if you said it this way, Okay, thanks. The journey started, when they started putting blocks together more quickly than other kids, or it started when they started talking at a younger age, or it started, there are any number of indicators, and you may remember some of them when the journey started. All right, so that journey has already started. You are at a particular point here where there is recognition for what the journey ahead may be. So this is a great moment of appreciation and celebration, and you should feel really proud of where you are and what's been accomplished. And my hope is that moving forward, that you be good advocates for your children, that make sure that they get the opportunities that they deserve, that you encourage them, and you have their teachers encourage them to develop good thinking skills, and that you support them in doing the things that matter to them. When you do that, then you'll come back to me 5 years from now and you'll go, that was good advice. Thank you very much. So thank you. I'm going to stop now, and we've got a good 15 minutes for questions. So I am happy to. You have microphones that you're going to wander around with questions. That's great, because I can't see them. They will ask questions and I will answer them.
I have 2 quick questions.
Yes.
Does the early application process make a big difference?
When you say early, do you mean like early decision, early action?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So some colleges have either early decision or early action, where essentially you typically apply by the beginning or middle of November, and then you get a decision in the middle of December of the student's senior year. So it's an early process. Sometimes it makes a difference, and sometimes it doesn't. One of the maddening things about the college admissions process is that the fine print matters. So, like if you like reading fine print, you're going to love college admissions. All right, because every school seems to be doing the same thing, but they're not really. If you love spreadsheets, if you love making lists, you're going to love college admissions. So early decision typically provides a benefit to the student in terms of their chances of being admitted, because it is binding. If you're admitted in December, you're making a commitment to apply to the school. Early action, which has the same timetable, but is not binding, it's just an early notification, typically is not beneficial to the student. But it does allow the college to identify some particularly bright kids if they want to recruit them for the next 4 months. There's also rolling admissions and other things, but yeah. Okay.
And then my second question, our high school has an IB program.
Yeah.
Does that make a difference when you're seeing applicants?
So one of the things that we understand is that every school district, and sometimes every school, makes different decisions about their curriculum. There's IB, there's AP, there's dual enrollment, there's ACE, there are any number of them. Right? We make no judgment about whatever curriculum your school has chosen. What we want is for a student to challenge themselves. So typically in an IB school, for most of the students that apply to Duke who are at IB schools, for example, they're doing the diploma. All right. So because they're always, you can always challenge yourself more, challenge yourself less. So your benchmark should be, most of the time, what do the bright kids at the school typically do? I know that's awfully vague, but that's the best. So yeah, so if you have a choice between being challenged and not being challenged, be challenged.
First of all, thank you for the information. This is great, especially at the early stages. Do you have any comments, guidelines, or thoughts that you can share with us about scholarships?
About scholarships, yeah, okay. Thank you for asking the question about scholarships. First of all, I think scholarships are great because they ease what can sometimes be a very significant financial burden. Also, I mean, understand, right, scholarships are one of the ways a college says, we want you. Sometimes scholarships are a way of a college saying, we're not sure we're going to enroll you, so we're going to sweeten the pot a little bit by making it financially hard for your parents to turn down. Now, all legitimate. College admissions is, among many things, a competitive environment. I think that it's worth applying to scholarships. There's some scholarships you have to apply for, some you don't. It's worth applying for scholarships. If you're offered a scholarship, you know, it's worth considering very closely. Some people really like to apply for a lot of scholarships. If that's how you want to spend your time, okay, it doesn't seem like the most fun thing that I can think of or the most interesting thing. I think if the opportunity presents itself, you have to take it very seriously. But you have to decide how many scholarships you and your child want to apply for. But they're great. We offer them. So I like them. I think they're fabulous.
So my question is about summer activities.
Yeah.
So I'll just present three hypothetical students.
Sure.
One that goes to a selective academic summer camp, say in writing or music, that's student A.
Right.
Student B does a community service, 250 hours, say in the inner city or maybe even in a developing country. And student C takes a job at McDonald's where they see they have a coworker who's addicted to heroin after having a high school sports injury and a boss who gets fired because the boss couldn't come to work to take care of a sick child. How do you think about those three different types of summer activities?
That's... If it's a McDonald's that I always go to, I don't want it to close, so that's important. I think each one of those is great for the student for whom that's the right choice. And I know that may sound disingenuous, but it is absolutely true. I can easily imagine, let me put it this way. So think of those three possibilities, right? It's very easy for me to imagine the student who is forced into one of those three activities because their parents think it's a really good idea that they should have that experience, okay? That is a great recipe for disaster, or at least wasted money or wasted time. I can equally imagine a student for whom that's the right path, where it means something to them, and where it is a deeply meaningful experience, right? Now, I will also say, with respect to community service, and this is my own bias. If there's something that can be done locally, I think that is more often than not superior to something that is done far away. I mean, I sometimes ask myself, how many more churches need to be built in Central America? Because that's what everybody does, and I think it's great. And I think if there's a mission trip that the students, that if the students are in a religious community and they're taking the mission trip and it's sort of this combination of service and social and it's what students do, I think that's wonderful. But if a student seeks out opportunities like that, or if parents seek out opportunities like that, simply because they think it's going to look good, then that's usually not the reason to do it. I will give you one anecdote from my own child's experience. So my child is interested in STEM, math and science, right? Shocking as a TIP student. And the summer between her junior and senior year, right? And she wants to study physics in college, and maybe math, or both. And so the summer between her junior and senior year, I'm thinking, okay, some kind of STEM program, like, can you please be interested in some kind of STEM program? But no, she decides to spend a month in Germany in an immersion program, and then the rest of the time working at a glass studio, fused glass studio. That's what she wants. There's not a piece of STEM in there at all, And she's applying to STEM schools, right? And I'm like, so I had to give myself a little talking to. But the reality was, the reality was, that's what she wanted to do. They were both things worth doing. And in fact, and what I said to her was, either colleges are going to like that or they're not. And if that's what you love to do, if that's what you get meaning and enjoyment out of, and a college doesn't like that, right, then they're not a good match for you. And if a college does like that, then they are a good match for you, right? And we were all okay with that, and we were all okay with how things turned out. So the three examples, they are all good examples, and they are all bad examples. Doesn't that help? But that's the honest answer. That's why it's not the thing, it's the intersection of the thing and the child.
My son is enrolling in 8th grade in a school of innovation, and he will graduate when he's 17 with an associate's degree as well as his high school diploma. Would he apply then as a transfer student, and does that in any way negatively affect his application to universities?
Okay. These are great because there are an increasing number of early college programs in North Carolina and elsewhere. There are two things to keep in mind. One is what you will find at many colleges, I can't say all colleges, but certainly many selective colleges and private colleges, is that a student who's in an early college program where they're taking either dual enrollment or early college program have to make a choice about the college courses that they take, and that they either will be counted as college courses or they will count on the high school transcript, right? Because at Duke and a lot of schools like Duke, if a course appears on a high school transcript, even if it's a college course, we will count it as a high school course. You won't get college credit for it, and you will apply as a first-year student. Right? There are schools, and a lot of students make a decision. I've done dual enrollment, I'm getting an associate's degree, or I'm doing an early college program. I've got 2 years of college credit. I can apply as a transfer student, either with an associate's degree or not, and I can finish college in 2 years. Right? You have to. This is one of those wonderful areas where you have to ask every single college what their policy is. That child could apply to us as a transfer student, absolutely. But as an 18-year-old transfer student, that typically, they are not going to be as strong a candidate for transfer admission as someone who finished high school, then went to 2 years of college, and then is applying with not only 2 years of a college education, and typically a more advanced college education, but also 2 years of college engagement, college activities, college learning under their belt. So it becomes a family decision. Is it important to finish the college education more quickly, or is it important to have what's typically a wider, broader college education? There's no way to answer that question. That is one of those questions that is different for every family, every student, and there is no right answer. There is no right answer. The answer to your specific question is yes, they can apply as a transfer student. The second part of the answer is they will probably be a better candidate for college admission as a freshman applying under those circumstances than as a transfer. But again, every family is different, and the decision that's right for one family, whether it's something like this or something like those activities, the right answer is different for different families. Yes. Oh yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead.
What school is your daughter going to next year?
It's a good school. I'm not going to say.
Okay.
I had this conversation with my daughter, and she reintroduced me to the term humble bragging. No, it's a very good school. It's a school that a name that people recognize. And it's not Duke, which is also a name that people recognize.
If your child has ADHD,
Yeah.
but they've been able to overcome and do well,
Yeah.
but still have challenges, is
Yeah.
that something that should be brought up in an application or left off? Does it raise red flags that some people might take negatively?
Yeah, that is a great question. That is a fabulous question, and I'm really, really glad you asked that question, because there are things like that, and sometimes there are learning differences. You know, there are any number of things like that people are sometimes afraid to mention because they're afraid that it'll negatively affect a student's application. My practice and my policy is that, as a rule, being more transparent is better than being less transparent, as a rule. Now, it's not a hard and fast rule, but most of the time, and certainly something like this, most of the time, it's better to say more than it is to say less, for a couple of reasons. Because overcoming some challenge, and ADHD is certainly a challenge, overcoming that takes work, it takes effort, frankly, it's finding the right mix of drugs that sort of solve the problem, or you know, sort of executive function work. I mean, there are any number of things that take energy, that take time, and when you've accomplished them, are an accomplishment, right? So my own feeling is, if a student and a family has had to work on something, and they've worked it through, and they found a solution that works, and that takes energy and it takes time, why not mention it? I'll also say this: the college landscape in this area is very different than when we were applying to college. When we were applying to college, and when I started in admissions, talking about disabilities of any kind, talking about learning differences of any kind, was really kind of a red flag. It shouldn't have been, but it was. And I will say colleges were much, much less accommodating and much less tolerant and much less accepting of all of these challenges. At this point, you can pick any college, in the country, and you are going to have some percent of students that are coming with some, whether it's ADHD or other issues. I mean, and it's also, you know, it's celiac disease. It's any number of things, right? It's food allergies. It's any number of things. Colleges are much more accepting of the fact that students are coming to us with a much wider range of challenges than they used to, or at least they're open about those challenges. And colleges typically are very understanding and very accepting, and they have programs in place. So if you want a clue to how well a college is going to do in this area, or whether you should mention it or not, is ask the question in an information session or when you're touring, you know, what kind of support does the college have? What kind of support does the wellness center, the medical center have? You know, what kind of, whether it's therapeutic support, whether it's a pharmacy, whatever it is, what do they do for the students that come with learning differences, with ADHD, with whatever, you know, with whatever the issue is? And if they say, oh yeah, we do this, this, and this, or we have these people on staff, or here's how we handle medications, you know, that sort of thing, that tells you right there, they've got it. You know, if they were to say, oh, we don't really have that problem here, then that tells you something as well. That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. Okay, so this is our last question. You get the prize for
Okay, I have 2 questions.
well, sorry. You gotta pick one. No, I'm kidding. You can ask 2 questions, but make them good.
All right, sure.
Make sure
I will.
everybody's going to care about it. Yeah.
I'll try. Well, somebody asked about the scholarships, and I know there are typically need-based and merit-based scholarships. So what kind of scholarships does Duke offer, and what percentage-wise, you know, are need-based more, or, you know, what percentage are those?
All right, what's your second question? Because I'll answer that question second.
Okay.
What's your second question?
It's a little different question. Let me give a background. Like, I have of course, a 7th grader, and as well as one who's about to go to college in a couple of years. And the thing is, as all the parents here have the bright kids, and generally in the state universities, or, you know, the kids will get admitted with all the tuition paid, and, you know, basically no money has to be paid for those universities, and certainly some of those universities offer similar courses what big universities like Duke or other well-known universities offer. And parent like me, it's depending on the scholarships. I mean, if our kids don't get those scholarships, I have this question all the time in my mind these days, that why should I be sending my child to a private university like Duke and pay tens of thousands of dollars when similar education can be found in state university? And typically the reasons I have heard from people are, well, the private universities will have Nobel laureates, professors, or like-minded kids that they will be mingling around. I mean, I understand those reasons, but as you said, and you would agree that not every time being number one is the best for everybody. So I understand that priorities and student fit and everything will decide the college, but why should we be, if something similar, say for the sake of comparison, if we say there are similar courses offered, why should I be sending my child to the Duke?
Okay, so there are two questions then. One is, places like Duke are very expensive. Why are they worth the money? And the second is, what kind of scholarships does Duke offer? Okay, so now I'll answer that first question first, because I wanted to put them in the right order to benefit me. So overwhelmingly, the financial aid that Duke offers, and you will find this at a lot of private universities and private colleges as well, certainly among the best-known colleges and universities, the overwhelming majority of financial aid that's offered at colleges like that, and like Duke, is need-based. They're need-based financial aid, and the amount of financial aid or the amount of scholarship that a student receives or the scholarship that a family receives is based on the individual family's financial circumstances and the analysis of those circumstances by the college's financial aid office. Every college is now required, and this is a tool that you might think about now, every college is now required to have something called a net price calculator. A net price calculator on their website. And with that, they tend to be relatively simple programs. You can get a sense of how much financial aid you or your family, your child, might be eligible for if they were applying to college now. Now, obviously, college does not get less expensive. It only gets more expensive. But every college does, and some colleges, there's a particularly sophisticated one, sophisticated and simple, I believe at Wellesley College, Women's College in Massachusetts, and others using that same algorithm that gives you an idea, gives you kind of a range of possible costs. There are a small number of merit scholarships at Duke, we offer about 70 merit scholarships a year for an entering class of 1,700 students. Every college is different. Some colleges that we compete with have no merit scholarships. Some have a lot of merit scholarships. So every college is different. The percentage of scholarship, the percentage of students receiving scholarship varies incredibly widely. So that's one of those areas where you are going to have a fun time digging into websites and asking questions of admissions people. But that's a very legitimate question to ask. But it's different at different places. We do it one way, many of our peers do it similarly, many of our peers do it differently. Final question, which is this worth it? Is this worth it? And I mean, I think it's worth it because I work here. And I think that the quality of the experience, I think that of the entire educational experience, I think that the quality of interaction and the learning that students do from their professors and their peers in particular are different at a place like Duke and at other places, right? I mean, personally, I think that's a worthwhile difference. And at the same time, I mean, I think of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is an awesome place. It's a fabulous place. I think of the University of Texas, right, in Austin, which is an incredible place, right? I could think of the University of Michigan, right? I mean, there are a lot of state universities that are spectacular, that they offer everything that a student would want. And that's one of those interesting decisions then that a family makes and that a student makes. Where a student, the right school, the right college, is one where your child will be both comfortable and challenged. Right? That's always been my mantra. You ought to find a place where you're going to be comfortable and challenged. And sort of once you find that cohort of schools that are like that, then every family can decide for itself, okay, how much are we willing or able to pay for that? And there's no right answer. There is no right answer. I went to the University of California at Santa Barbara, right, which in many ways was a great experience, but it wasn't the best match for me. But it was a great match it was a fabulous match for some of my classmates. So that is sort of the interesting intersection of child, parent, money, institution, future. Good luck. You will figure that out. But there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer. There's just the answer that's right for every individual student. And fortunately, you're in a position where the likelihood of having a lot of choices, of having a lot of options, and then being able to decide what's best for the student and best for the family is going to be in front of you. So, and with that, I will stop. I thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and congratulations again.